This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayigash. And we are Be'ezus Hashem holding at the 11th Parsha of Sefer Bereshis, Parshas Vayigash. So we ended the previous Parsha, Parshas Miketz, with a cliffhanger. And I think we have to do a little bit of a recap just to bring ourselves up to speed so we can jump into the next chapter of this incredible story. So Yosef HaTzadik, at the young age of 17, was sold by his brothers, initially to a caravan of Egyptians, but eventually he made his way down to Mitzrayim, became the butler in the house of one of the prominent government officials in the land of Mitzrayim, Potiphar Sarat HaBachem. Because of a libel that was imposed by Potiphar's wife, the infamous Eshes Potiphar, Yosef ended up in prison for 12 years. How did Yosef emerge? The pasuk says that Paroi had a dream, and then he had another dream. And the dreams were very real to Paroi, so much so that they bothered him to the point that he called all the Chartumei Mitzrayim and he told them, you have to figure out a way to be poiser this chaloi. But nobody was able to. Turns out that one of Paroi's ministers, the Sarah Mashkin, told Paroi that when I was in prison, I was together with some young Ivri. At the time, I had a dream similar to yours in that it was really, really bugging me. My compadre, the Saraoifim, also had a dream like that. We both presented our dreams to this young kid, and he was able to be poiser it with pinpoint accuracy. I think it would behoove you, Your Honor, Your Majesty, to meet this person, present him with what it is you're struggling with. I think he might be able to help you. The pasuk says that Pari immediately acted on the word of Yosef. Yosef all of a sudden has an audience in front of the most powerful person in the world. He gives Paroi a pisroin that Paroi likes, and not only does Paroi accept his pisroin, but he now incorporates Yosef into his cabinet, into his government. In fact, he made him the Mishloach Melech. He made him the second most powerful person in the world. Now, what was the pisroin of Yosef's dream? It was that for the next 7 years, the economy was going to boom, and the produce that was going to grow in Egypt was going to be very much shaloi kederech hateva. However, it was going to be followed by 7 years of hunger. And what Yosef told Paroi, the dream was telling him, was that what you should do during those 7 fat years is hoard as much product as you can, so that when the hunger years come, you're going to have food to sustain the country. Not just that, the hunger is going to affect not just Egypt, but it's going to affect the surrounding countries as well. They will have not had this booming economy. They will have not been privy to this inside information. And as a result, they're going to have to come onto you for money. And as prominent as you have a place right now amongst the nations, it's going to be that much greater. You have no idea how much riches this is going to bring to Egypt. Either way, Paroi hires Yosef to be his Mishloach Melech and really to oversee this project. Fast forward 7 years later, there's a hunger. It gets worse. It gets even worse than that. It gets even worse than that. It got to the point that it even affected Canaan. And the pasuk says that Yaakov, back home with his kids, they got to the point where suddenly they too were starting to struggle a little bit. And they had to figure out what they're going to do for food. So they decided that they have no choice. They're going to have to go to Mitzrayim and they're going to have to buy food. Now, not all of Yaakov's sons went. It was the 10 of them. Which didn't go? Yosef, obviously, because he wasn't there. And Binyamin, because Yaakov was very afraid to send his son Binyamin. Why was he afraid? Because of the fate that had occurred to A, his brother Yosef, and B, his mother Rachel. So he was afraid to send Binyamin. So the 10 boys go, and they make their way into Mitzrayim, and they're going to go buy food from this Majber, this person who's the Mishloach Melech. His name is Safnas Panech, by the way. He's in charge of the economy. He's in charge of all the distribution. Who's going to get what? Now, it turns out it's their brother Yosef. Yosef knows that they are his brothers, but obviously they don't know that Yosef is their brother. And the pasuk says that as soon as Yosef saw them, he accused them of being spies. They said, I have no idea what you're talking about. He says, really, tell me a little bit more about you. You have any siblings? Yeah, we have one who's gone. We have another one who's back home. How about a father, mother? Starts asking them a whole bunch of family questions. And at the end, Yosef tells the brothers, the only way I will accept your argument that you're not spies and you're simply here like everybody else is to buy food is in the event that you could bring that little brother with you. If you can bring him along, then I'm going to trust you. If not, I'm not going to be able to trust you. And they immediately started kicking and screaming. They said, there's no way we're going to be able to bring this brother. It's not possible. It's not possible. You don't understand. He's so meaningful to my father. It's a dangerous road. There's no way it's going to happen. He says, that's okay. But I'm telling you now, if you don't bring him, you're not getting any food. Not just that, he takes Shimon as collateral. Shimon's staying with me. This is the ultimatum. So they had no choice. They went back home. They told their father what happened, and the father said, Shimon can stay. I'm not sending Yosef nothing, Binyamin nothing doing. Anyways, a little bit of time passed. The hunger got a little bit more intense. It became a little bit more severe. It got to the point where they absolutely had no choice. And at that point, Yaakov said, you know what? If I have no choice, I have no choice. Now, Yehuda had turned to Yaakov and he told Yaakov, listen, I understand this is not something you're comfortable doing, but at the same time, Anoichi Arvenu, I'm going to take achrayas. I'm willing to co-sign. I'm promising you that I'm going to return Binyamin to you. So as much as this is scary, but I'm telling you I'm taking achrayas. And with Yehuda's achrayas and Yaakov really not having much of a choice, he went and he sent Binyamin. Initially, when Yosef saw Binyamin and the brothers, so the brothers technically had lived up to their end of the deal, which was deliver Binyamin. So he released Shimon, and not just that, they all get together, they have this nice meal, they even got drunk, the pasuk says. And then Yosef did something very, very suspicious. On their way out, they're heading back home with their food, and everything seems to be great, right? Even Shimon's coming home. Yosef goes and he plants his gavia, his special becher, in the bag of Binyamin. And then he immediately has one of his officials go out and puts out this kol kaira, we're missing the becher of the king. We have to find it. And they start doing this big search, and they're searching everybody. And lo and behold, they find it in the bag of Binyamin. And Binyamin is brought back in front of the king, and the king says, what's going on over here? I don't understand. I've been so good to you. Think about everything that I've done. I mean, you came back, I treated you in an incredible way. You ate the meal with me. Nobody gets to eat the meal together with the king. And this is the way that you pay me back. The punishment that this young child is going to have to endure is that he is going to be my slave. The rest of you, alulu shalom alavichem, you can go back home. But he has no choice. He has to stay with me. Now, the brothers were all looking at each other, and this whole story made absolutely no sense. And the truth is, let's take a step back now. It really didn't make any sense. Like, what was Yosef thinking? So throughout Parshas Miketz, we spoke out the Ramban, who said that Yosef was never looking to chop it with the brothers. That was never the objective of Parshas Miketz. It certainly sounds like it. I mean, you wouldn't be wrong for thinking that this is Yosef's way of poking at them and getting back. Told you so, right? Get ready for what's going to happen in Parshas Vayigash, then I'm really going to tell you so. But the Ramban says, Chalila, that's never what was going on in Yosef's mind. Yosef was motivated, mitchila vatsoif, based on this nevuah that he believed he had received through his chaloimus. And he knew from his dreams that he was supposed to get to a point where he was going to be a melech of some sorts, and that his brothers and ultimately his father also were going to bow down to him. But it was going to happen in two stages. First, his brothers were going to bow down to him, and then afterwards, his father was also going to bow down to him. The reason Yosef wanted Binyamin to come appear in front of him before his father even came was because he wanted that first dream to be able to play itself out. The reason that Yosef went and he planted the gavia inside the bag of Binyamin is because before he sent Binyamin back home together with his brothers, so that Yaakov can come and now they can fulfill the second half of the dreams, he had to make sure that it was safe to send Binyamin back with his brothers. Why wouldn't it be safe? Well, the brothers didn't like Yosef because he was the son of Rachel. So how does he know that they don't have the same sentiments towards Binyamin? And for that reason, he had to make sure that the brothers were going to be there for Binyamin. And his way of ascertaining that was by putting Binyamin in some state of jeopardy and seeing how the brothers are going to react. If they're going to react in a way, well, okay, it is what it is, we'll go back, whatever, well, then obviously he knows he can't trust Binyamin together with the brothers, and he has to start working on a plan B. If, however, they're going to fight for him, well, then he realizes that they very much are okay with him, it's safe to send Binyamin back. And now, the second and really the final chapter of the story of Yosef is able to go into motion. So what was the reaction? So the initial reaction we saw in the end of Parshas Miketz. The second part of the reaction is going to happen at the beginning of Parshas Vayigash. In the end of Parshas Miketz, Vayomer Yehuda walks into Yosef and he says, Man noimer ladoini, man edaber man etzadak. He says, I don't even have what to say. I mean, he's looking at him, rolling his eyes. Come on. I mean, we didn't steal this Gavia. I don't know what you want from us. There's nothing in the world that I can even say. The only thing is, you're taking Binyamin as a slave. Hinenu avadim ladoini. We should all be slaves. I think you should take everybody. Vayomer, Yosef's last words of Parshas Miketz are Chalila li me'asois. Chalila chas v'shalom. I'm an erelcha person. I would never do something like that. I am keeping Binyamin. I want him to be my slave. And that's where we are right now, says the pasuk. Vayigash elav Yehuda. So now Yehuda goes a little bit closer to Yosef. And this is his second stab. Vayomer, and he said, Bi adoini, ich beitich, my master. Yedaber no avdecha davar ba'azni adoini. Allow your slave, meaning me, to say something in your ears. Val yichar abcha ba'avdecha. And I don't want you to get angry at me, ki chamoicha kefara, because I view you the same way I view Parah. So Yehuda now tries 2.0. And again, what are his words? His opening remarks. Bi adoini. Yedaber no avdecha davar ba'azni adoini val yichar abcha ba'avdecha ki chamoicha kepare. It's interesting. There's a machlokes Rashi and the Ramban. Pashut pshat, what Yehuda was trying to do. Not the taich of the words, but the tone of the words. What was his gisha? Pun intended. Vayigash. What exactly was his approach? Rashi says that when Yehuda came after Yosef right now, he came after him tough. Rashi says it again and again and again. Every single Rashi. Vayigash elav Yehuda. What's the first thing that he says? Yedaber no avnecha davar ba'aznei adoini. So Rashi, yikonsu dvarei ba'aznecha. I'm going to talk to you and I want the words to go right into your ears, as opposed to my nose, meaning you better listen to what I'm about to say, right? Next words. Val yichar abcha. Don't get angry. Mikan zok Rashi. Atalah made you learn. Shediber alav kashos. He was talking tough, right? So if you go over to someone, you tell them something, I don't want you to get upset, but I have to tell you something. Obviously, you're about to say something that might upset the person. So from the fact that Yosef said, Al yichar abcha ba'avdecha, so that's a raya zok Rashi. That he must have been talking to him very, very tough. And then finally he told him, Ki chamoicha kapare. So first Rashi brings a pashut pshat, but then Rashi brings 3 pshatim from the Medrash. I'm going to read all 3. The first thing he said was, you're just like Paroi. Paroi, one of the previous paros, chepered with my grandmother Sarah. And you know what happened to her? Or what happened to him? He ended up being punished. He ended up with saras. It ended up being very difficult. You're going to end up suffering the same fate that Paroi suffered. Davar achar, another pshat. Paroi was a geyser ve'enoi mekayim. You're also a geyser ve'enoi mekayim, because you said that you were going to look after my brother Binyamin, and this is not called taking good care of my brother Binyamin. And then finally, ki chamoicha keparoi. You don't scare me, and Paroi doesn't scare me. As a matter of fact, if you don't start playing nice with me, I'm going to kill you and Paroi all in one. So according to Rashi, Vayigash elav Yehuda completely changed his tone. He goes over to Yosef, he practically grabs him by the lapel, and he tells him, listen to me, I thought we were going to do this the right way, but, I'm from Brooklyn, and if I have to do this in another way, I'm going to do this in another way. We'll break a few kneecaps along the way if this is what has to happen. And this is the Vayigash elav Yehuda. This is the way Yehuda's approaching. But if you look at the Ramban has a whole different derech here. Ramban says that's not what's going on over here. Bi adoini, ich beitich, yedaber no, avducha, right? To the contrary, the Ramban says that when Yehuda approached Parai, Yosef, he approached him with an incredible amount of humility, with an incredible amount of hachna. He wasn't coming tough. He was coming behachna. The reason he said Val yichar apcha ba'avdecha is because anything I say might upset you because you just gave me a verdict, right? The verdict was in the end of Parshas Miketz. Binyamin's going to be my slave. So how dare I come now and suggest anything to the contrary? So please don't get upset at me. I have tremendous respect for you. Just like I have tremendous respect for Parai, I want you to know I have tremendous respect for you as well. But says the Ramban that really Yehuda's approach wasn't an approach of being tough. To the contrary, it was divrei pius. He was coming in a very kind, he was coming in a very sensitive way. I saw the Cheskuni says, what does it mean, Yedaber na avdecha davar ba'oznei adoini? Pashut pshat. Rashi says, Yikonsu dvarai ba'oznecha. The Cheskuni says that he whispered into Yosef's ear, Yedaber na can I please say something in the ear of the king? I mean, I don't want everyone to hear it. I just want to whisper this into your ear. That Barbanel says the same exact thing that the Cheskuni says. And he adds a little bit of a beer. He says, because really, what Yehuda was doing was disrespectful. If the king says it's over, it's over. So you can't publicly go and appeal and question what it is the king said. But if you want to do it quietly, privately, that's a whole different story. Being that Yehuda is asking for something that maybe he really shouldn't be asking for, and he's dafka asking for it in the most sensitive way. So he says, can I please whisper something into your ear? I don't even want anyone to hear it. This is being approached with utmost sensitivity. But either way, Machlokes Rashi and the Ramban, in terms of the whole Vayigash of Yehuda. According to Rashi, Vayigash of Yehuda is coming tough, and according to the Ramban, Vayigash of Yehuda is just the opposite. Now the Ramban says one other punchline. He says that if you look carefully at the language of Yehuda, he said, Yedaber na avdecha davar ba'oznei adoini. I want to tell you one thing. The truth is, Yehuda's spiel, his narrative, starts in Pasuk Yudches. It's going to go through Pasuk Lamed Daled. So this is going to go 17 psukim right now. But it's a davar, says the Ramban. And the Ramban says that really from all 17 psukim that we're about to learn, there's one nekuda, there's one punchline that Yehuda is driving at. Everything else is the appetizer. Everything else is divrei pius. It's building up to what it is he wants. Meaning, sometimes if you have an audience with a politician, with an important person, what's your ask, right? Yehuda has one ask. We're going to see what that is. Everything else is just building up. It's leading up to that aspect. At the end of the day, Yehuda is very focused in terms of what it is that he wants. It's going to sound a little bit like some emotional appeal, but it's not. It's actually extremely, extremely focused. There's one thing that he wants, what that davar is. So that's going to play itself out in the next several psukim. So Yehuda gets to work. And he says, Adoni shal es avodav leimar. He says, I want to go down memory lane a little bit. He says, my master, you had asked your slaves, meaning us, this is the way you speak to a king. Do you have a brother? Do you have a father? Now it's interesting. We'll speak at one last Rashi. Rashi, Lishitasai, says that what was the point of this pasuk? Adoni shal es avodav leimar hayesh lachem av oyach. So Rashi says, Metchila ba'alila bas aleinu. This was all part of Yehuda being tough with Yosef, and he tells him, Lama hayilach lishal kalela. Why were you asking me these questions? Listen to Rashi's lashon. Bitcha hayinu mevakshin. What, we were looking to do a shidduch? Achisenu atam mevakish. You were trying to marry one of our sisters, right? But we told you everything. I mean, don't try this at home, right? This is how he's talking to the king. You're asking me questions about my family? What? You're going to be mishadach with me? Come on, I'm an Ivri. You wouldn't even eat bread with me, right? So that's obviously not what's going on. But this is all Rashi L'Shitase. That kana talamed shediber olav kashas. According to the Ramban, that's bichlal not the niggin over here. To the contrary, he's speaking to him very softly. He says, I just want to, go through a little bit how this all played itself out. So again, Adoni shal es avodav leimar, you had asked your slaves, do you have a father? Do you have a brother? And we said, yes, yesh lanu av zaken, we have an older father, we held school in Katan, and we have a younger brother, va'achiv meis, his brother had died. And this little brother that we have is the only one of the children left to his mother, right, Rachel. And his father loves him very much. So you told your slaves, you told us, I want you to bring him down to me. Eini Olav, and I'm going to keep an eye on him. And we told our master, it's not an option. Why? Because if he's going to leave his father, he's going to die. So who's going to die? Rashi says we're afraid that Binyamin is going to die. Even Ezra says Vameis Aviv, the father's going to die. But either way, he can't leave because it's not going to end well. So you told us that if you're not going to bring your little brother with you, you're not allowed to see me anymore. Okay, so we had no choice. So we went back to your slave, our father. And we told him everything that you had said. Our father told us, it's time to go buy food. We said, we can't. If we have our younger brother with us, then we can go. Because we are not able to have an audience again in front of this man, the man who's in charge of the food, unless we're going to have that little brother. So your slave, our father, told us, you know, that my main wife, Rachel, gave me two sons. One of them one day left me. And I was told, that he was trampled, he was eaten up. Haven't seen him up until this point. Now, if you're going to go ahead now, you're going to take this son as well. And an imglik, something bad is going to happen to him. You're going to just put me away. So now Yehuda goes back to Yosef and he tells him, now, if I'm going to go to your slave, my father, and this child is not going to be with us, his soul is so attached to his soul. Binyamin and Yaakov, you can't imagine what's going to be. In fact, I'll tell you. When he's going to see that the child is not there, he's going to die. Here, for sure, Vameis means Yaakov is going to die. And we will have caused our father to have to go to his grave, in a state of mourning, in a state of depression. Now, the way Rashi explains, Yehuda now inserted, he says, you're probably wondering, why me from all the brothers? Why am I the person that's making such a big deal about this, right? I'm the one who put up a fight and then the Parshas Miketz. I'm the one that's putting up the fight now in the beginning of Parshas Vayigash. So why is it me? The reason is because I'm the one who took achrayas. Ki avdecha arav es hanar me'em avi lemar. I told my father, Im lo yavienu elecha, if I'm not going to return my little brother to you, v'chatasi lavi kol hayamim, then I will have sinned kol hayamim, which means I forfeited my olam haba. That's how much I have on the line right now. V'ata yeshev na avdecha tachas hanar eved ladoini. So here's my request. I'm asking you now, can I please be your slave instead of Binyamin? V'hanar yalem echav, and let the child Binyamin, let him go back to his father. Ki eich ela el avi, because how can I go? V'hanar einenu iti, if the child is not with me. Pen erev bera asher yimtza zavi, just the thought of seeing my father's reaction and the terrible fate that's going to befall him in the event that I return without my brother Binyamin. This concludes pretty quickly the 17 psukim of Yehuda 2.0, talking to Yosef and trying to save his brother Binyamin. So al pi darkei shel Ramban, what just happened? The Ramban said that Yehuda prefaced his remarks, Yidaber na avdecha davar ba'oznei Adonai. I'm going to tell you, I have one ask. What was Yehuda's one ask? Says the Ramban, his one ask was Pasuk Lamed Gimel. It was the second to last Pasuk that we read. Va'ata yeshev na avdecha tachas hanar eved la'Adonai. My ask is that Binyamin deserves to be a slave. I want to be a slave instead of Binyamin. Instead of taking him, take me. By the way, Rashi adds that really you're better off taking me anyways than you are taking Binyamin. Why? Because l'chol davar ani me'ula mimenu, Rashi says. I'm better than Binyamin in anything that you could possibly expect from Binyamin. L'gvura, ula milchama, l'shamish. I make better coffee. I'm a better fighter, right? I can do your book. Whatever you need him to do, I will be able to do better. So, and as a result, it actually would behoove you, it made good business sense for you to take me rather than to take Binyamin. But the bottom line is, what was the davar? What was the one ask that Yehuda had? Yedaber no davar. But Osnei Adoini was va'ata yeshev no avdecha tachas anar everlad. So what was everything else? So why do we have all these psukim leading up to it? He gives them a whole history course. Adoini shalas avadav lemar yesh lachem avayach. And we told you this, and you told us that, and then I went back home and I told my father this, and he told me that, and it says the word avdecha 100 times. Like, what is all this going on? I mean, we know there wasn't one chiddush, I don't think, in these psukim that we just read. So based on that, so why do you have to have the whole arichas? So the Ramban says that the reason there was an arichas is because Yehuda actually thought that Yosef was a good guy. And the Ramban explains why he thought that. He says there were a few clues. He says, number one, if you remember, Yosef told the brothers in Parshas Miketz, he told them, right, at one point he tells them that I fear God. Now, what was the context in which he said First, he was going to take 9 brothers and keep them as collateral and send one home to get Binyamin. And then, by Yom HaShlish, he says, you know what, let me just keep Shimon, I'm going to send 9 of you back. And he said, you want to know why I'm doing this? Because so Yehuda trusted Yosef. He says, if you really fear Hashem, so you're a God-fearing person. Right? It's more than that. In the end of Parshas Miketz, when Yehuda goes to Yosef the first time, and he tells him, I think we should all be slaves. What's Yosef's reaction? I would never do that. He's talking to an erlich person. This is a person that's not just some mad, narcissistic dictator. There's a person to talk to. It's a person with a soul. So if he's already coming with the approach of that means there's somebody to talk to. It's even more than that. Yehuda felt that Yosef was, in a way, trying to be kind to them, right? When they brought Binyamin, he invited them into this big meal. He keeps on filling up their sacks with food. He keeps on finding his money. Now, he can't make sense of this person. It's very, very strange to him. This is an incredible enigma wrapped in a mystery, right? But at the same time, he feels like there's somebody to talk to. There's definitely somebody to talk to. And it's for that reason he felt that maybe he can somehow pull on his emotional drawstrings and maybe get him to come around a little bit and at the very least swap out Binyamin for Yehuda. And that's really what he's going towards. Okay, so how does he do that? He does that by telling him, he says, you don't understand, this kid Binyamin means so much to my father. If my father loses him, his life is going to be over. So, if you're a Yorei Elikim, if you live in the world of Chalil Ali, if you're really trying to be kind to us on some level, let's be honest, would you want to kill our father's son, his father? It's not something you want to do. And that's really what he's playing at. He's playing on the compassion of Yosef because he sees that there's a Pesach to be able to do that, and he's trying to convince him that to take me, it's going to be fine. Shimon was here for a long time. It wasn't such a big deal. If you take Binyamin, the world's going to come to an end. And I'm just begging you not to take Binyamin. Now, just to prove his point, meaning maybe this is just a spiel, to prove his point, he says, I didn't even want to tell you about Binyamin. You realize what it took for me to get Binyamin here? I never told you I had a brother Binyamin. The only reason I told you is because Adoini shalas avadav lemar, hayesh lachem avayach. Right? And then even when we finally told you about him, and you said, I'm reading through the psukim. And then when we went back home and we told our father we have no choice, he still didn't want. And then finally, I had no choice. I had to be makabel arvas. So you see, we didn't want to bring Binyamin here all the time. It's not like I'm making up some story now. I'm telling you all along. I never told you about this kid. I told you, l'chatchila, we can't send him. My father didn't want to send him. This kid will put my father away. If you're a Yari Elikim, if you live in the world of Chalilali, if you're trying to be kind and compassionate to us on some level, here's my ask. But at the end of the day, says the Ramban, everything was just divrei piyus v'sachanunim, and it was leading up to that one punchline. The punchline is, don't take Binyamin, take me instead. I just want to speak out one other point in Pshutei Shel Mikra. It's so pashut, but didn't hit me until preparing for this year. And that is, everybody knows that first Reuven told Yaakov, he said, I'll take achrayas on bringing back Binyamin. Eshnei banai Thomas. And Yaakov didn't even want to hear from it. And then when Yehuda said, Anoichi arvenu, miyadei tivakshenu, right, when he was makabel achrayas, then finally Yaakov came around. It's different pshatim. The Rabban already talks about it. Why Yaakov was willing to accept Yehuda's achrayas, but he wasn't willing to accept Reuven's achrayas. But one thing is clear: the achrayas of Yehuda was an achrayas of arvos. He said, "Anoichi arvenu." In fact, not that long ago, when Daf Yomi was holding at the end of Masechtas Bava Basra, we learned the sugyas of Orev. So we saw that the Gemara learns halachos in Hilchas Arvos from Yehuda. It was a Kabbalas Arvos. That's what it was. So it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's so pashut. It's so pashut. I think it's so pashut. What is Yehuda telling Yosef? He's telling Yosef, don't take Binyamin, take me. Mechatesi. It's a funny ask. Mechatesi. The teretz is because ki abdecha orav esanar. I'm an orid. What does a co-signer do? A co-signer pays the loan. He pays the chayv when the loiva is not paying the chayv. Meaning, what he's telling him is that I'm a baldover over here on this chayv because I was mekabel arvus on this chayv. So if I was mekabel arvus on this chayv, so you have a chayv right now, and you're saying I'm not just going to take it from all of you. No, I'm going to take it from the person that owes it to me. Who owes it to you? Binyamin owes it to you. But guess what? I'm a co-signer of anything that Binyamin owes you. So Memela, you should go ahead and you should take it from me. That's his whole taina. The Arvus of Yehuda played itself out lamaisa. When Yehuda told Yaakov, Anoichi Arvenu, he wasn't just using some flowery lashon, Anoichi Arvenu, he meant it. This was a real Arvus, as in Bava Basra, like the Gemara learns halachas from the Arvus of Yehuda. Where did the Arvus play itself out? Yedaber no avda chadavar ba'aznei adoni. That is exactly what he's saying. Ich bin an Orev. An Orev means come to me. Now the truth is, when do you go to the Orev? You go to the Orev when the loiva doesn't have. If the loiva has, so you don't go to the Orev. But that's all part of what he's saying. L'chol davar ani me'ula mimenu. L'gvura, l'mulchama, l'shamish. He has, what are you, crazy? You're going to go to Binyamin, you're going to get Ziburis. You're going to come to me, you're going to get idiots. Right? But me, you're getting busy. You're going to get idiots. You're going to do much better with me. But the reason Yehuda is putting himself out there is, and the reason he's putting himself out there in this specific way of Yeshevna, is because he's an Arif. The reason Yehuda put himself out there, everybody knows, because he was Mekabel Achrayas. But what did it mean that he put himself out there? The Ramban says this whole spiel was one line. It's one ask. Right? Don't ask for 9 things. Even David HaMelech said, that's the ask. That ask is not just related to the fact that he was Mekabel Achrayas. It's related to the fact that he was Mekabel Arvus. He's an Orev, and that is what the Orev does. What the Orev does is, instead of the loiva paying, I'm the one that's going to pay. I think it's pashut, and I actually think it's somewhat illuminating, but either way, this concludes Perek Memdal. And really, at this point, Yosef had heard everything that he needed to hear. Again, Yosef wasn't looking to chapel with Binyamin. He wasn't looking to chapel with Yehuda. He wasn't looking to chapel with Shimon when he had incarcerated him. He certainly wasn't looking to chapel with his father. This was never the objective of Yosef. What Yosef at this point was looking to do was he was trying to make sure that there was a hava, and achva, and shalom, and reyos between Binyamin and the brothers. He knew there wasn't between him and his brothers, but that was many, many years ago. And he wanted to make sure that they were capable of getting along. He can trust his brothers to take Binyamin back home, to tell Yaakov that Yosef is alive, to bring Yaakov over to Mitzrayim, so that the second dream would play itself out, and as they say, the rest will be history. When Yehuda put himself out there in the way he did, and he put himself out there per the last 17 psukim. I mean, he tried it 1.0 and then the Parshas Miketz, and then 2.0 in the beginning of Parshas Vayigash. So Yosef saw that Yehuda is not playing games, and Yehuda is going to make sure that Binyamin gets back to his father, and that everything is okay. Well, if that's the case, now Yosef is able to do what really he wanted to do the minute he saw his brothers. And he's able to take this now to the next level. And says the pasuk, "V'lo yochal Yosef l'sapik l'chol hanitzavim olav." It's a big shaila in the Rishonim how to learn Pashut in this pasuk. It's amazing. You open 10 Rishonim, you're going to see 10 different pshatim. It feels like the most Pashut pshat is that in Parshas Miketz, when Yosef saw Binyamin for the very first time, so the pasuk says he started to cry, and then he had to wash his face. Vayisapak, he strengthened himself, and he walked back in, meaning he caught his composure. But over here, he couldn't catch his composure anymore. Rashi says a little bit differently. Rashi says that Yosef was about to reveal himself to his brothers, but he didn't want to do it in the presence of all the mitzvah because he wanted to embarrass his brothers. You know how embarrassing this was about to be? And because of that, so immediately, Vayikra, he said, I want everybody out. And there was nobody standing in the room. When Yosef revealed himself to his brothers. And Yosef started crying very, very loudly. And all of a sudden, everybody heard what's going on. The whole palace, the whole castle of Pari, everybody hears crying. Yosef is crying. Now, no one knew why yet. Even the brothers didn't know why yet. It says the pasuk, so Yosef turns to his brothers and he tells him, Ani Yosef, I want you to know I am Yosef. Tell me, is the tata still alive? And when the brothers heard Yosef say, Ani Yosef, which came with a question, they couldn't answer him because they were so scared, they were so overwhelmed, they were so bewildered by what they just heard, they couldn't say a word. And we are going to stop here. So the very, very last pasuk that we just read, Vayomer Yosef Alechav, Ani Yosef, Ha'od Avichai. Why couldn't they say a word? Because their whole world just came crashing in. I mean, they've been negotiating with this person for quite some time now. I mean, they have on their conscience, where's their brother? They have no idea. They haven't heard from him in over 20 years. Turns out he's Yosef? Are you kidding me? And by the way, this also means that the chaloimus and everything came full circle. And they were just so blown away by what happened. They were so blown away that so we're going to get back to this in 1 second. But 2 ha'aras to end the first share. The first ha'ara is, so we mentioned, and this is really the theme of the beginning of Parshas Vayigash, that when Yehuda approaches Yosef 2.0, and he comes with a 17 pasuk plea to try to spear Binyamin. There's a machlokes Rashi and the Ramban what the approach was. Rashi says, Mikana talome chediber olav kashos. And with that theme, he threads the entire parsha. The Ramban says just the opposite. It was divrei pius and it was divrei tachanunim. The truth is, both pshatim, Rashi's pshat and the Ramban's pshat, are recorded in a medrash. It's a medrash Rabbi right here in Parshas Vayigash. The pasuk says, Vayigash elav Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda v'Rab Nechemya v'Rabbanan. Rabbi Yehuda said, Hagosh l'milchama. When it says Vayigash elav Yehuda, what does it mean Vayigash? He waged a war. Heich mad'at amar Vayigash yoya v'ha'am asher imei la'milchama. You find the word Vayigash in the context of Milchama. Rabbi Nechemya said, Hagosh l'pios. What does it mean Vayigash? Lepios, He came to appease him. Madat Amar, Vayikshu b'nei Yehuda el Yehoshua. And what does it mean over there? Lefaisai. So you find the word Vayigash in the context of Pius. Rabbanan Amri, the Rabbanan are a third pshat. They said Hagasha l'tfila. The word Vayigash means tfila. Vayigash Eliyahu, like the pasuk says, that Eliyahu was Vayigash, Vayomer Hashem Eloikei v'goymer. And what did he do? He went ahead and he davened. So the Medrash brings three pshatim in Vayigash El of Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nechemia, and the Rabbanan. Rabbi Yehuda said Hagasha l'Milchama, Rabbi Nechemia said Hagasha l'Piyus, and the Rabbanan said Hagasha l'Tfila. Now, that's Pashit, that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia's pshatim in the Medrash are Rashi and the Ramban respectively. First, Rabbi Yehuda says Hagasha l'Milchama, that's Shitas Rashi. Mikanat alomed shediber el of Kashas. Rabbi Nechemia said Hagasha l'Piyus, that's the Ramban. He spoke to him divrei piyus and divrei tachnunim. So the two pshatim, Rashi and the Ramban, I'm a furish in a Medrash Rabbah, right here, Parshas Vayigash. If you want to look it up inside, it's Parshas Tzadik Gimel Vav. But there's a third pshat in the Medrash. The Rabbanon said, Loi kedivrei zeh v'loi kedivrei zeh. It wasn't milchama and it wasn't piyus. You know what Yehuda was doing? Yehuda was davening. Like you find Vayigash Eliyahu Anavi Vayomer Hashem Eloikei. You find the concept of Tefillah in the context of Vayigash. And the Heilige Chassam Sofer, throughout his Sfar, here in Chassam Sofer al Torah, and in many of his drushes, he asks the obvious question: how could the Rabbanon say the Vayigash El of Yehuda was a Tefillah? It's not a Tefillah. He's talking to Yosef HaTzadik. It couldn't be more obvious. Vayomer bi Adoini Yedaberna Avdecha Dava Ba'oznei Adoini Vayichar Abcha Ba'avdecha Ki Chamoicha Kaparoi. 17 psukim of Tefillah? No, he's talking. Where's the tefillah? Kashos, you can learn the psukim like Rashi. Piyus, you can learn the psukim like the Ramban. But where exactly do you find that Yehuda daven? And the Chassam Sofer says a davar nifla. Now it's interesting. We talk about this a lot in the shir, that a lot of the Torah of the Chassam Sofer are yesodis that repeat themselves over and over and over again. And very often, when the Chassam Sofer says a yesod that repeats itself, Chassam Sofer writes in his svarim that I'm repeating an idea that I've spoken about so many times. Almost every time the Chassam Sofer brings this Inyan, he says, Kfar kosafti bozeh harbe pamim, Kfar herachti bozeh b'mekoymos harbe. So this is an idea where the Chassam Sofer himself is telling you. You don't have to be malakid it. Where the Chassam Sofer himself is telling you that he was mayrich, and this is an idea that he's spoken about many times, and it's based on a Torah from the Ramami Pano, and it's a davar nifla mamish. The Ramami Pano said that in Sefer Nehemiah, the pasuk says that Nehemiah, so he was a high-ranking official by the Persian king, and the pasuk says one day, Vayomer li hamelech, the king comes to me, Nehemiah, and he says, Madua panecha ro'im, you look very sad today. Vata incha choila, it's not like you're not well. Ein zakiyim roya leiv, must be you're like depressed. Va'ira harbe ma'od. Nehemiah said, I was very frightened when the king told this to me. Va'omer lamelech, but I told the king, Hamelech lo'olam yichya. May the king live forever. Madua lo yeru panai. Why should I not be depressed? Asher o'ir, the city, base kivrois avoisai, where my ancestors are buried, Chareva is destroyed. Ushe oreh, and its gates, uklu ba'esh, were consumed by fire. So the king told me, Al mazeh ato mevakesh. So what is it then that you request? So Nehemiah said, V'aspalal elokei hashamayim, so I daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'omer lamelech, and I told the king, Im al hamelech toiv, v'myitav avdecha lefanecha, asher tishlacheni el Yehuda el kivrois avoisai ve'evnena. You know what my ask is? My ask is, could you please send me to Yehuda, send me to the city. I want to play a role in rebuilding the city of Yerushalayim, which of course is the story, the beginning of Bayesheni. So the Ramami Pano asked, he said, read the pasuk. Vayomer li hamelech. Nehemiah says, the king asked me, Al mazeh ato mevakesh, what do you want? So what was the immediate response of Nehemiah? V'espalal elokei hashamayim, I daven. But doesn't say what the tefillah was. The next pasuk, va'omer lamelech, I then turned to the king and I responded to the king. Im al hamelech toiv, v'myitav avdecha lefanecha, shetishlacheni el Yehuda el kivrois avoisai ve'evnena. I'd like you to send me to Yerushalayim. But what was the tefillah? And besides, what? In the middle of a conversation with the king, he davened? So the king says, what can I do for you? And he's so scared. He says, one second, I've davened mincha. I'll get back to you in a minute. Right? It should take about 20 minutes. You can't do that. And then immediately he talks to the king. So the Ramami Pano said a davar nifla, said the Ramami Pano, because the derech of the tzaddikim and the derech of the chassidim is that they don't stop talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Listen to this. He says even when they speak to people, they're really not even talking to the person. They're talking to the Eibishter. And the real tzaddikim, they knew how to talk in a way where it looked like they were talking to the person. Yeah, pshutay shal mikra. Bechitzonius, they were talking to the person they were talking to. But bepnimius, they were never being masiach das from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And they knew how to manipulate their words and calculate them in a way where at the surface, it would look like they're speaking to the person that they're speaking to, because they were. But really, deep down, kol kavanosam was they were talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So said Ramami Pano, Vayomer li HaMelech, the king tells me, Al mazeh ata mevakesh, what do you want? Says Nehemiah, I responded to the king, but I want you to know that response to the king wasn't only a response to the king, it was also a tefillah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Va'espal l'Elokei HaShamayim, achab gedaven to the Eibishter. Va'omer, and I said LaMelech, I said it to the king, the Persian king, but I was also talking to the Melech Malchei Amlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I said, Ima ala Melech Tov, v'im yitav avdecha lefanecha, asher tishlacheni el Yehuda el erkivos avoisai ve'evnenu. Yeah, it's a request of the king, but it's also a tefillah to the Melech Malchei Amlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Ramami Pano said that with this Yesod, it's going to open up so many different chapters in Ach. I'll just mention one other, in Megillas Esther. So, Esther makes the second Mishnah. Vayomer HaMelech leEsther, gam bayoyim hasheni b'Mishnah hayayin, ma'aseh losech Esther HaMalka v'tinosei lach, u'ma bakososech ad chatzi HaMalchus v'seyos, v'atan Esther HaMalka v'atoymer. This is the Ramami Pano talking. So Esther turns to the king. Which king? Achashverosh. But really she had in mind the Eibishter as well, and said, Imotzosi chen beinecha HaMelech, v'mal HaMelech toiv, tinosein leit nafshi b'sheilosi v'ami b'vakashosi. This is the ultimate Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Summit, said the Ramami Pano. That when they were talking to the Melech Basav Adam and making a shtadlus, snapshot, I'm also going to daven. In the Bakashas, Gevein HaTfilah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That Nehemiah is the one that taught us this lesson. That when you speak to a king, and really we speak to anybody, any person with power for sure, and with influence for sure, it comes from an understanding that really everything comes from Hashem. It's all Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Summit. Said the Heilige Chassam Sofer, Avada. When Yehuda was talking to Yosef, he was talking to Yosef. Of course he was talking to Yosef. Milchama, Pius, he was talking to Yosef. But at the same time it was a tefillah. Where was the tefillah, said the Chassam Sofer? The tefillah was this Inyan that the Ramami Pano was megalatas. Just like Nehemiah, when he spoke to the Persian king, he was davening to the Eibishter. And when Esther said, Tinosen li nafshi b'sheilosi v'ami b'vakashos, which she was saying it to who? She was saying it to Achashverosh, but she was also davening it to the Eibishter. Yehuda was doing the same thing. Yehuda understood that he had to get Binyamin home. He had no choice. So Vayigash of Yehuda, yeah, other like Rashi, other like the Ramban, Aber Rabban and Amri, there was also a tefillah. It was a tefillah Vayomer, and he turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he says, Bi Adoini, Yidaber na avdecha davar ba'osnei Adoini, Val yichar apcha ba'avdecha ki kamoicha kefar. Now what's the taich of those words? What was that tefillah? So the Chassam Sofer says, the taich was, V'hachi nami, Omar Yehuda, Kim medaber el Yosef, as if he was talking to Yosef. V'kavanosoi hoysal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but really his kavanah was to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He said, Yidaber na avdecha davar ba'osnei Adoini Yisparach Shemai. I want to speak to you. Val yichar apcha ba'avdecha she'ani chafet sheyiten Hashem ruchai al zeh ha'omed b'mokim paroi v'yoshev al kisei tomei shalai al yichar apcha alai b'davar hazeh. He says, I'm asking you now to bestow some ruach of compassion upon this king. He doesn't know it's Yosef, who's like paroi, who's some vile person as far as I'm concerned. And it's unbefitting for you to rest your shechina and even get involved in the heart and the mind of such a person. But I have no choice. So al yichar abcha ba'avdecha, don't be upset at me that I'm asking you that. But please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I need you to help me. Vayigash of Yehuda was in the chitzonius of it, either milchama or pniyim. pious. But in the pneumius, it was tefillah. Because this is darkun shal tzadikim. They don't stop talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shivisi Hashem l'negdi samin. And Yehuda's Vayigash Elav Yehuda Vayomer was a Vayomer to Yosef, but at the same time, really kavanasai hoysal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. His real kavanah was to talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the oimek in Vayigash Elav Yehuda l'tefillah. Divrei pi chacham chem. Half of a fellow mamish. That's the first Torah. The second and the last Torah is, so how did this shir end? Vayomer Yosef al Echav, ani Yosef, ha'oid avichai, v'lo yachlu Echav la'anois oisai kinivalu mipanav. It's Yedua that Chafetz Chaim used to say. It was Margula Bapume. He said that, we go through life with questions. Everybody has questions. Things happen to us as a nation. Things happen to us as individuals that very often don't make a lot of sense. They don't make a lot of sense. And we have questions, and we have questions, and we have questions. So the Chafetz Chaim used to say that the brothers had questions. You think they had questions? They show up to Mitzrayim, they're trying to buy food, like everybody else is trying to buy food, and all of a sudden, miraglim at them. We're spies? What are you talking about? And all of a sudden, this person who they've never met before starts interrogating them. Tell me, you have brothers, you have sisters, you have a father, you have a mother. I need to see your brother. If I don't see your brother, you're not getting any food. Why would you have to see my brother to get any food? It doesn't make any sense. And then they come home and they find their money, and they come to their Shimon gets incarcerated. They bring Binyamin back finally, and this king is so nice to Binyamin, then all of a sudden he plants a becha there. I mean, their world was spinning 1,000 times over. They couldn't figure it out. I mean, it was to the point they made a cheshbon hanefesh. Aval Hashemim anachnu. Obviously, we're guilty because we heard our brother crying and screaming. I mean, they started pulling out every card they could possibly pull out because nothing made sense. It was so bizarre. It was so crazy. But Chafetz Chaim said, what happened? Yosef HaTzadik opened up his mouth and he said 2 words. He said, Ani Yosef. And everything made sense. And all of a sudden, all the cards came crumbling down. It all fell into place. You're Yosef. Oh, now I understand. And in a minute, every part of their life, of the last 20-something, it all came, it fit like a glove, like a perfect puzzle. Everything made so much sense. So Chafetz Chaim said, that ba'achris hayamim, the end of days, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to reveal himself to the world. He's going to say 2 words, Ani Hashem, Ani Havaya. And when the Eibishter says Ani Hashem, everything is going to make sense. And every single person that walked this planet is going to understand in a nuanced way and in a macro way why whatever happened to him in life happened to him, and where he fit into this puzzle, and where he fit into this cosmic plan that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had set into motion 5,785 years ago. Right now, we're not expected to understand everything. We're living now in the story of Yosef. But one day, Ba'achos Hayamim, the Chafetz Chaim said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to reveal himself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to come to a point where it's going to be V'lo yochad l'sapek. And finally, the Eibishter is going to roll open the curtain, and we're going to see the Shechina, and we're going to hear 2 words uttered. We're going to hear the words Ani Hashem, and when we're going to hear the words Ani Hashem, it's going to be maybe V'lo yachlu echav la'anois kinivalu mipanav. It might be scary, but at the same time, everything is going to make sense. All we need to do, said Chafetz Chaim, is hold on tight, live b'emunah shalema, that everything is with a cheshbon, everything is for our good, kol ma'david rachmana l'tavavid, and wait, b'chol yom, to hear that cry of Ani Hashem.